Hello, and welcome, Monica and Brian. So, this panel, this first talk that we're going to be doing is all about setting the foundation. So, if you guys have been watching the summit, I'm Georgie, so I'm not going to do a whole re-intro, right? Just run it back, rewind. But this talk is going to be about discovering your why, right? And how to build a business around it. Because I truly believe you can't really start building that business until you set the foundation, and that's with your purpose, your why. Like that is the core of it all. So that's going to be our first talk for today at the Solopreneur Summit. So Monica, I'd love for you to give us an introduction about yourself and what do you do.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you and with everyone else who's watching. Thank you for your time. So my name is Monica Rivera. I'm a first-gen Latina from the Bronx, and I am a business clarity coach. I started my business 2 years ago. So I actually say it started 6 years ago, but it really started to take off 2 years ago. And I'm a business clarity coach, and I specifically help multi-passionate women of color start and grow their business. And we can talk later about why that's so important to me, but it is really rooted in everything that I'm about. And I am so delighted to be doing this work and walking in what I believe is my purpose.
Awesome. Shout outs to the Bronx. Another Bronx girl here. Yes, BX, baby. Brian. Brian's like, I'm not from the Bronx. Or maybe he is. Brian, if you could give us your introduction today.
Thank you, Georgie. I'm actually here in Brooklyn, so we got a little borough battle between us. But hello, everyone. I am Brian Helfman, founder and chief experience officer at Third Nature, where we create experiences that empower you to be your true full self. What does that mean? So we live in a world, I think, where we're constantly bombarded with influences from parents, teachers, peers, society, social media, news media, and it can be hard to hear with clarity and confidence that inner voice that is screaming about who you are and what you want. So we create experiences from adult summer camp weekends to Conscious Conversations, which is our free event series that we host every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And we do a lot of like virtual programming and workshops for other companies and stuff like that. But it's all the core purpose of our work is empowering people to be their true full selves. And we also have a now leaning into this focus on multi-passionate creators. So Monica, I love that that's a commonality that we have in who we're serving.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. So it seems both of you, and it's very clear, actually, not seems, it's very clear that both of you, started with your passion, started with your why. So how did you identify that passion? How did you first discover it? And I'll guess, let's have Monica answer that first. And then, Brian, you could jump in. Like, how did you figure it out?
Sure. So I love actually answering this question. And it's because since I was a child, I was always someone who wanted to do many, many different things. There was a book growing up where every new school year, you had to circle what it is you wanted to be to grow up. And I would circle almost everything and then also add in my own option. So at one point, I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. So the first Latina Supreme Court justice, a basketball player, and a hairstylist. And you couldn't tell me anything. I wanted to do all of these things and really move, like all of the options were always available to me. However, I had this belief, but what my external worldview is that is not what I saw, right? I didn't see that there was a lot of opportunities for me. I didn't have people that I necessarily modeled after. I didn't have business owners in my life, but I still had this belief that there was something more that I could do with myself. But as someone who's multi-passionate, one of the really common traps that we can sort of feel can be a trap is that there's so many things to decide to do that it's very hard to choose one. And so initially when I began my work and I began my business, I had been in marketing for 15 years at the time. I'd worked for all these different Fortune 500 companies that people have heard about, like Citigroup and Verizon and Deloitte. And I felt like I did not want to do this work anymore. And so I abandoned it for a little while and I started to go into podcasting and I wanted to just talk about anything because I really felt like I talked about marketing and business for such a long time that I had all these other things that I wanted to explore. Well, after about 130 episodes of recording this podcast, I realized, no, I really do love business and marketing, but I also love talking about mindset. And so I decided, what if I started to lean into this one thing? So leverage the gifts that I had been paid for and my skills and my expertise, but also the things that I had read about and really practice in, which was mindset work, and merge those two things together. And that's how the coaching business was born. So it was deciding, and it all starts with a decision, to pick the one thing that you feel is really lighting you up, and then experimenting. Because once you do that experimentation, you can decide, is this the thing that I really want to go all in on, or do I want to pivot to something else? And as someone who's multi-passionate, there's always something else on that list. I got very fortunate by marrying all of my interests together in a way that really speaks to me and also speaks to my audience.
Thank you. So that was such an in-depth answer, because I feel what I want to highlight, which from what you just said, is like the multi-passionate, right? Like the really ambitious people. So in the slogan for the conference, I was just like, by ambitious doers for ambitious doers, because the higher your ambition, right, you want to do so many things. And the bittersweet part of it is that oftentimes you're good at those many things. So not a lot of people are good at many things. And where you're good at many things, it's just like, should I do this or should I do that? And other people's opinions may impact, right, how you feel and which thing that you should pursue. But you're probably like, yeah, I can do that, but do I really want to? Maybe not at this moment, right? I'm great at that, but I want to try something else, right? And especially when we get to our like pinnacle, I don't know if you guys feel it too, when you really get really, really good at something, you wake up one day, you're like, reset, start over. Like you just go to something that you never even touched before, and your friends and family are like, are you psychotic? Why are you doing this? Why are you changing your mind? And so, being able to focus in and, be able to focus in, as well as explore those passions in different ways. And then I know, Brian, you mentioned also working with the multi-passionate, the multi-hyphenate person. And then you also mentioned the summer camp. So tell me how you identified your passion and how that manifested into the business, because I love a good time, and, summer camp seems like a fun experience. So tell us about, how did you identify yours?
Yeah. So similar to Monica, it was a long road, and it wasn't like I sat around thinking, what's my passion? How can I turn that into a business? It was a lot of experimentation, a lot of just like following what felt right in the moment. I've had corporate jobs. I've worked at startups. I founded, this is my third company, but ultimately, I love this Marie Forleo quote. She says, clarity comes from engagement, not thought. And I work with so many aspiring entrepreneurs and early stage entrepreneurs who are like, what's my passion? What's my purpose? And I'm like, I don't know, go find out. Like, you're not going to discover it just by like sitting there in deep thought. You're going to discover it by actually going out and experiencing different roles and different types of industries, and tuning into what makes you feel alive, where you get into flow states really easily, where you get good feedback from people you work with and people that you're serving in whatever it is that you're doing. So I think, and with that, I do think the thought piece comes with reflection. I think reflection is really important. It's important to kind of excavate your story and pull out the past experiences you've had where you felt alive, where you felt authentic and like you were leaning into your core values. And use that as a compass, use your values as a compass. Because passions honestly are fleeting. They can change. Like, there are things that I was passionate about 10 years ago that I'm not passionate about anymore. Whereas values, I think, are much more sustainable and sustaining. So yeah, this passion word, I think, gets thrown around a lot. And I think if we obsess over building a business around our passion, we're actually risking setting ourselves up for burnout, because I think building a business around your values, and I like the word purpose, finding, excavating your experience to find what are the problems that I'm uniquely equipped to solve based on the experience, the combination of experience, passion, and skills that I have. And again, I think you figure that out by experimenting, by trying things and going with what feels right.
Absolutely.
I'd love to add, if I may, Georgie, if that's okay.
Yeah, jump right in. This is a conversation.
I also, one of the things that I like to teach is that your purpose doesn't always have to be for profit, right? And so I love the idea of being able to utilize some of our passions in order to make profit, right? But the purpose can be for something else. The purpose can be for the legacy that we want to leave. It can be for the generational wealth that we're trying to develop for our generation and for the generations that come after us. So it doesn't always have to be the same thing. And it's also okay to say that for this season, this is where I'm going to focus on. And in the next season, however long that might be, I'm going to focus on something else. The great thing about it is that we bring all of our experiences with us. So my corporate America experience still informs a lot of the work that I do, because foundationally, that's how I was sort of brought up. But all of the experience that I have living in the Bronx and all of the, family history and all these other things that would take a lot longer to talk about than we have today also inform the things that I have. So understanding that we're never leaving anything behind, but we're simply adding to our toolkit is also really important as we're thinking about ourselves as business owners, and especially as solopreneurs. All of these things can be leveraged in different ways as we're building our business.
Absolutely. So I love that, right? The concept and the truth that your experience carries over. So you may be good at X because you did and you were good at Y. And so that experience doesn't leave you. And so, you both pointed out the fact that you don't only have, you don't have to pursue your passions or for profits, right? And I think that there is a thin line, right? There is a very thin line, because I know I'm pretty sure all of us have done it one time where it's like we're passionate about something, we're interested in something, and then we're like, okay, somebody's willing to pay us. So I'm like, okay, cool, let's accept that paycheck. And then before you know it, it's just like, if I ever have to do this thing again, I will jump off of a bridge. Like, no, like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to touch it. And that's, some of the symptoms of burnout, when things that you love to do, right? You just don't want to interact with it anymore. You have no interest in it. You just want to get away from it immediately. So that is definitely an unfortunate side effect if you're not careful, right? But you do have to have a reason, right? So that's where we go into your why, your purpose. You have a reason why you're pursuing this work. Like, why are you interested in it? Why is it now? Why is this season the right season to pursue that specific part of your venture? And so, my next question to you guys is, can you share a real life example, right, of other entrepreneurs that have come into your network? So both of you work with other founders and other solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, and you don't have to drop any names unless you want to, of someone that was a little stuck, then they found their purpose, right? They found their why, and then built a business around it, and maybe how you supported them through doing that. And maybe we could kick off with Brian, and then Monica. Go the opposite direction this time. The thinking phase.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about just like a general like persona that I come across a lot in my work, which is someone who is kind of like, I think it's common to, be in a job that you're kind of lukewarm about. I actually really like working with aspiring entrepreneurs who have a relatively stable job. I mean, as we've seen, especially over the last few months, no job is like completely stable and secure, which is another reason why, like, I think it's worth it for a lot of people to take that risk and try to build something of your own. But I think there are a lot of people I've worked with who, have a job that they don't love, but they don't hate. So like, they're not dying to get out of it, but they know they don't want to be there for the next like 3 to 5 years. Right. So they have some flexibility outside of work to experiment, to explore, to, and I always say, like, don't take the leap and go full time with your business until and put pressure on it to support you right away use that job as like kind of a safety net to give yourself some runway, and use that free time outside of work to experiment, to build, to connect with people, right? Like I think a lot of, we talked about, you know, excavating your story, reflection, experimentation, trying different things. I think a lot of ways that we can go about figuring out like, what is that business that I want to build, is through connecting with people that we just have good conversations with, you know, doing that in your spare time and exploring collaboration possibilities. I think that's another great way that you can work towards the point where, and because especially as a solopreneur, I love being a solopreneur, and I need, I love working with people on projects. I love like project-based partnerships where there's a start date, there's an end date, and at the end date we can like kind of do a post-mortem to see how the project went and decide if we want to like do something else in the future. And so I think, you know, the people to get back to your question, Georgie, the people I've worked with that have built successful businesses, a lot of them don't, and this was the case for me too. Like, a lot of them don't necessarily start saying, okay, I'm going to build a business, and I'm going to work on this for the next 5-10 years. They say, I'm going to I'm going to work on a project. I'm going to try to address a problem that I see that I think I can solve with this, you know, product or service. And I'm going to work on it for 3 months, and, you know, give yourself the runway, the stability to be able to focus on that thing for 3 to 6 months and see if you can get some traction with that. And again, like, bring other people in for support to collaborate with, and then like, you know, see how it goes and go from there. And, you know, this was the case for me. I started 7 years ago, you know, with a trip to Costa Rica for college age entrepreneurs. And it wasn't like I didn't think 7 years down the road, like, what do I want to build? I just said, I feel like I'm uniquely equipped to solve this problem for college age entrepreneurs. Let's see if we can put one trip together in Costa Rica, build out a program for that trip and see how it goes. And it was a huge success. And then we like built on that. But it started with just that one project with like a clear start and end date. And then we built from there. And I again, I think that's like, I see that a lot. And I think that's a good way to get started.
Yeah, it's almost like what is it called? Spontaneous combustion. You know, you're doing a bunch of things and you're like, I'm just trying to get this one thing to work, and then something else happens. You're like, oh, I think I've just discovered penicillin, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that is a very cool journey, and I've seen a lot of that happening as well. So what about you, Monica? You could either share a specific story or experience, and I think you, since you're in your work, that have people have found their purpose and their passion and then pursued building something, or you could share, you know, what commonalities that you may see between multiple people that you've worked with.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned the idea of being stuck. And so I think every single person that I work with comes in saying that they're stuck. But the reality behind this, and this is a hot take and it might hurt some feelings, but the truth is that you're not stuck, you're scared. And you're scared to make a decision. And that is the piece that is the hardest thing, because in that decision, it is, am I going to make a mistake? Is this the right thing to do? Am I going to fail? Is everyone going to laugh at me or talk behind my back? Is my family going to understand? Am I going to waste money doing this venture, trying to pursue this thing? Am I too old? Am I too young? Am I not experienced enough? There's so much fear behind that question of, am I stuck? So the first thing is really unpacking what are some of those thoughts that people are feeling beyond the idea of being stuck. Because we all know that we can give anyone strategy on how to do things. But if their mindset is not there, and we are not believing that we can actually achieve that outcome, then the best strategy in the world will not help us succeed. I use this example often. The weight loss industry is multi-billion-dollar industry. People know essentially at the core what needs to happen for someone to lose weight. But the reason why we're not all walking around fit and snatched in our best selves is because in our minds, we do have something that's blocking us from getting to the place where we want to be. So for people that are stuck, it's that same level of fear. And those are a lot of the people that I work with when we first start our time together. I will also share this. There's something about the identity of having a 9 to 5 and being in our 9 to 5 for such a long time that as we transition to becoming solopreneurs and eventually having more people in our company, that identity that we have to embody and that shift that needs to be made from being an employee to being an owner, a founder, a CEO, whatever you want to call yourself, that is a real thing that is not talked about enough. So really understanding that identity and who you need to be in this new space can feel very foreign. It can feel very uncomfortable. And that's a lot of the things that need to be worked through because those things will come up when that doubt says, should I be doing this? Should I give up? Why am I doing this? Is it worth it? A lot of it is because we have not embodied the identity. If we truly believe that we are a business owner, then we will operate from the space of what does my business need in order to run efficiently, in order to make a profit, in order to be operational. And so that's a big piece of the work that I do with the people that first come to me, specifically around the topic of being stuck.
Thank you so much for that in-depth answer. And so, you mentioned that there's gonna be those mental blocks, right? Those mental blocks, I think, are right. We get into our heads, we start thinking things, we're just like questioning ourselves. And I don't know if this happens to you all, but I feel like for me, I start to question myself more when things start working, and I'm just like, really? You want this as a service? You want to pay for this? You want to do this for real? For real? Like, are you serious? So I think I get into my head a little bit more when it starts working because before that, it's just an idea. You could play with it, you could break it, you could do, but once it starts working and people start getting interested, you have to now stabilize it, right? Before it's just like running all over the place, doing whatever it wants to do. And it's like, okay, cool. Like no one's watching. And then it's like, I'm interested. And that's like, oh my God, there's eyes on me. Like I have to now polish and, be a little bit more perfect with it. So that kind of leads me into my next question. Around what were some of the early challenges that you experienced, right? So you're starting this business, you started pursuing something that you were passionate in and interested in, right? So you're just wanting to build that first thing, right? Just make it work. And then now it's transitioning to a business, right? This is a for real thing. Like people, got to do taxes, you have to do finances, you have to sell stuff, right? You can't just give everything away for free, right? What were some of those early challenges that while you were trying to transfer it from just an interest, a purpose, into now an actual business? What were some of those challenges making that transition? And Russian roulette. Whoever wants to go first.
Can I just say one quick thing, Georgie?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of related to, and then I'll answer your question, but related to what you said about like getting in your head when something starts to work. Because it's also related to what you said, Monica, about, and I love what you said about how when we feel stuck, it's usually fear getting in our way. So I once heard this framework for like better understanding our fears, where there are 4 horsemen of fear. The 4 horsemen of fear are fear of ridicule, fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, and fear of success. And that fear of success one often confuses people. It's like, why would I be afraid of success? But what's happening is when something starts to work, I think for a lot of us, we start to envision like the possibilities of like, if this continues to work, and it's different from what is right now. It's different from what we're used to, what we're familiar with. And our primate brains, right, that haven't evolved much over the last 100,000 years, we're living in this modern world, but like we're still physiologically the same as we were 100,000 years ago. And so we see change as a threat, any sort of change, even if it's like more money, bigger house, successful business, like it's different from what we're familiar with, and we're wired to, even if the familiar is uncomfortable, at least it's familiar and it's known. And it's relatively safe, and we're alive, and that's what we're wired to just survive, right? So, our primate brains can trick us into thinking that when something starts to work, it's like, oh, actually, like, let me pull back to comfort, to safety, where I'm at, because at least I know, like, I know what that looks and feels like. That's familiar, as opposed to, but I think once you become aware of that, you can override it consciously, right? When you make the unconscious conscious, you can say, okay, I recognize like why I'm pulling back here, and I'm gonna override it. I'm gonna like put down the emergency brake and keep moving forward, because I do want this kind of success. And to answer your question about like challenges I faced early on, there was definitely a little bit of that, like a little bit of the, seeing something start to work and be like, oh shit, like, am I gonna, like, is my entire life gonna change? And the truth is, like, no, my entire life hasn't changed. Like, I'm still the same person I was 10 years ago before I started my first business. But I think for me, like those early challenges, a lot of them stemmed around my own, like, I think we all kind of relate to this multi-passionate label, not wanting to be labeled as one thing and having so many different interests, and like focus has always been a challenge for me. So early on in my business, we did so much, like said yes to every opportunity, shiny object syndrome, like, ooh, squirrel, like let's chase it. But and I do think early on that that's not inherently bad. I think it's okay to default to yes and say yes to a lot of different things, again, in the interest of experimentation and gaining clarity around like what problems you're best suited to solve. But then like once I got to the point where I stopped trying to like metaphorically take like 10 different classes, 40 credits, and trying to get A's in each, but really like ending up with a lot of B's and C's. Once I like minimized my course load, focused on taking like 3 or 4 classes, a normal amount of credits, and I'm now more likely to get A's in those subjects, again, metaphorically speaking. So like do less to do it better. I think that's a point that a lot of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs will get to, where like you have to figure out like what's working best, and what's going to lead me to the place where I'm successful in my own definition of the word. I'm achieving my own unique and personal definition of success, and let me lean into that. But yeah, I think it's probably normal to go through that stage of like doing too much and then needing to pull back and focus.
Brian, if you wanted to come on here and call me out, like you could have just said that, right? Doing too much and then niching down it's scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like even, I feel like there's a part of me that's like, yes, I'm a seasoned entrepreneur. Like I know what I'm doing. And then this other part is like, when you start something new. So my current business is technically newer. So you get back into that phase. And that's another thing that's going to happen when you restart that journey, right? Especially if you're a serial entrepreneur, right? You still go through those like growing pains of this is still, even if you're an older founder, and you've been founder for a long time, this is still a new business. This business is going to talk, like they said, like each child or each pet is going to be individual and unique personality. It's the same thing when you come to your business. You're like, oh, I know how to do a business. I know how to scale. I know how to grow. And it's like this new business comes along. It's like, well, you see, I'm middle business and I'm going to drive you crazy. So yes, it can be very challenging. So what about you, Monica? What were some of your earlier business challenges that challenges when you experienced when you're converting into a business from just pursuing your passions and your purpose?
Yeah, so to be honest, there were many different challenges that I faced, both tactical as well as mental challenges. So I'll speak about this. A lot of the challenges specifically in business coaching and with an emphasis on marketing, because that's my background, we have this idea that we should be everywhere. And when we're everywhere, we're sort of scattering these little pieces, almost like that fairy tale character that was dropping the breadcrumbs, like going through the woods, right? And so we feel like we need to be in all of these different places. But in reality, we need to be where our people are, where our clients are, where our customers are. And that's where we really need to spend a lot of our time and our focus. But to Brian's point, when we're first starting out, and also I speak from the lens as a Latina, as a first gen, as a woman of color, there is a scarcity mindset that comes from saying yes to all the opportunities that are available to us. But when we actually take a moment to step back and to assess where is the revenue coming from for our business, it's usually coming from a certain amount of spaces. So rather than trying to spend time in these other spaces, what if you just got really good in this space where the revenue is already coming from? So for example, social media is a tactic. It's not a marketing strategy, it's a tactic. But if you're using that as one of your tactics to build clients and customer base, then look where on social media are most of your people coming from? Where are your leads coming from? Where are you nurturing them? How are they converting into customers? If that is happening there, then you should spend more time on the platform where that is coming from, as opposed to deciding, I want to spend more time on another platform. If it's coming from your email list, then focus on really converting the people on your email list before again hopping to another platform. So I believe it's about what Brian said also, not going into shiny ball syndrome, which I think is we can all fall victim of, especially as multi-passionate people, and thinking that we have to be in all the places or all the new things that launch, but really focusing on the 80% of the things in our business that are driving the clients and building the relationships. So I will say that. And then this has stayed with me, so I have to say it back from your other question. As you talked about fear of success, that is something that, I'll just be very honest and very vulnerable, has been a real thing for me. And I think as a woman of color, the conditioning that I had growing up was to always think of everything that could go wrong. And so planning for everything that could go wrong and having these contingencies and almost really bracing myself for that other shoe to drop. What feels very unfamiliar and why there's this fear of success is because we have not been conditioned to think about what if everything goes right. And that shift in thinking is completely mind blowing when we really start to embrace that of what if everything would go right. And our decision making becomes different, our clarity becomes clearer, our steps become more focused when we are moving from that place, as opposed to a place that many of us have been conditioned to believe is the place that we need to operate from.
Yes, that scarcity mindset and just fearing that things will go wrong. Like, similar experience. It's just like, it's just you get into this like fear, right? And that is true. Like I definitely claim it and own that. I have a fear of success. I'm working on it, working through it. It's been a while, but it's hard to get over because when so many factors of society, history, day-to-day work, right, says like, you should be afraid of this, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm good with failing. Like me and failing, we're friends. Like we hang out all the time, and I get back up and restart and do all the things. But I'm just like, what if this works? What if this goes really, really well? Then what? Then who will I have to be? Because I think it then requires us to step up into the next level of ourselves. And both of you have hinted at this in some form of way already, that it requires showing up in a new level, right? It requires, pursuing, focusing on that business, focusing on that idea. And yes, you're still multi-passionate, multi-hyphenate, but you do have to put some stuff on the shelf for a moment and say, yes, I can still play with you guys and hang out with you, but right now this is where my time has to go. So that looks like, building a team. That looks like, making sure lawyers and finances and, what does it look like if you do become a millionaire? Right, that is a whole different you. And it's not saying like, oh, you're gonna be getting like Lamborghinis and fancy cars, but you have to show up a little different, and that is scary because you don't know what that looks like. You've lived your life not being a millionaire, so you're like, I'm an expert at not being a millionaire, but what is it? What does my life look like when I am in that phase, right? And so it is something that we have to think through. And so as we come to the close of this session. I think you guys have been dropping so many gems. People are throwing like fire emojis in the chat, and saying that I have so many interests too. So thank you everybody that's watching live, and hello folks in the future watching the replay. But to close out, right, what advice would you all share with somebody that is right now, maybe they're early stage solopreneur, or maybe they're in like the mid level, they have 3 years in the business and now it's like a pull and tug? What advice would you give them to focus in on their why and then continue building their business around that?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, Brian, do you have something ready? Because I think I have 2 different messages depending on the audience.
I could share something quick. So, and this, you asked me this question a month ago, a year, like it'll be different given what I'm focused on, given what's top of mind for me right now. I would say play more, have more fun. And that may feel counterintuitive, which is why I'm saying it, because I think so many of us, we take our work so seriously and we take ourselves so seriously. And of course, like that's our natural inclination. I'm not saying don't take yourself seriously. Don't take your work seriously, but maybe don't take it too seriously, and make sure that you're also prioritizing play, because it's fun. It helps you like re-energize and come back to your work with fresh eyes and new perspective and more energy. But also that's where a lot of my best ideas, and you look at like successful entrepreneurs since the beginning of time, that's where a lot of the most successful ideas come from. It's that in-between time. It's that time that you take a 5-minute break to go for a walk and you see something that connects to another thing that you were thinking about earlier. And there's the aha eureka moment. Play is a way of collecting dots to be connected later. And obviously I'm biased, I run adult summer camp weekends for multi-passionate, entrepreneurial minded individuals. So, that's where that comes from. But I think whether it's at an adult summer camp weekend or just 5 minutes in the middle of the day to like get up and take a shake break and like dance in a really silly way, like no one's watching. I think we could all use a little more of that.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. I'm gonna do my little dance. Yes.
Yeah.
And yes, play is so important. Like I finally got because I have a framework around business, and it started with 3 P's. It was plan, produce, profit. And then I realized I'm like, this is not enough. So I've extended that. And so it's now purpose, plan, produce, profit, and play. So when you said play, I was like, yes, to the play, because it is so critical to us as humans, right? As children, we play. And then as adults, we're like, it's not allowed. That's how we get our energy, right? An object in motion stays in motion, and getting those, your dopamine, getting everything flowing and getting excited and playing is really very impactful to your business. And Monica, if you want to go ahead and share your advice for solopreneurs.
Sure, absolutely. I would say ask yourself better questions. And so what I mean by that is we'll get into a place of indecision or a crossroads in our business, and we'll say, what should I do? And that's a question that there's infinite possibilities of what you can do. But if you start asking yourself better questions of what is the one thing that I can do today? Who is the one person that I can talk to? If I already have this problem solved, what would that have looked like? So really start thinking, elevating the level of questions that you have, not only for yourself, but also for the people that you have within your network, the people that you have within your community, so that you can get very specific answers. If you had 5 minutes to speak to the person that you always wanted to talk to, you would have such a specific question for them and such a goal for that conversation. I want you to start to think about your business in that same way. Ask a very specific question and allow the answer to come to you. And so I love the idea of play and also creativity. When I am not spending enough time doing the things that light me up and I really enjoy aside from my business, then I find myself, I just keep going to books, I keep going to podcasts, and I keep looking externally for the answer, when oftentimes my next step is already something that I know about, But because I'm not allowing myself that space to disconnect from my business and do something else, it is not allowing me to see and have that clarity of what my next move should be. So think about that one specific question that you want answered for your business, and then allow yourself the space to actually pull away from the laptop, leave the phone at home, and then go find it in an area that gives you joy. And I bet that it will bubble up to the surface.
Love that. Love that. Right. Stepping away. So, right. I was like, these are gems. You guys y'all are good. Like, I wonder who accepted you guys to be at this summit. So again, so even now, like playing, right, having fun conversations and being super interactive and just letting the truth shine, because like you said, and both of you, hinted at this, that like somewhere in there, but society or whatever themes that are happening in the universe and the world may make you feel like, oh, I have to go this way or pick that thing, but deep down, right, and just as soon as you step away and you get that sunlight in your body, go to somebody's beach or something, you're like, oh my gosh, everything is so clear now, because deep down, but there's a lot of noise, especially we're all living in New York City, right, one of the busiest places in the world. So there is so many things that bring us noise. So once we step away from that noise, we sit with ourselves, we have a little fun, we get to our core, it really just blossoms, and then you figure it out and it all clicks and all aligns, and everything, magic happens. That's the best way to describe it. Magic happens. So thank you both, Monica and Brian, for being here with us today at the Solopreneur Summit. I really appreciated your time, your expertise, talking to us about discovering your why and how to build a business around it. We're gonna be sending everyone that registered out some information for Monica and Brian. But before we head out, how is the best way for folks to stay in touch and contact with you both?
Yes, so for me, you can find me at youwannadowhat.com. Or if you want to connect on social media, I'm at youwannadowhat on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time playing, because the marketer in me knows that that's where my people are. So if you are there too, I cannot wait to connect with you and meet you and answer any questions you might have.
Awesome. Brian?
Love that. I'm a LinkedIn guy, so you can find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect there, or Third Nature _ on Instagram. I'm sure if you type in Third Nature, like, we'll come up. But yeah, we're not super active on Instagram, but we got some good stuff there. But if you want to connect with me directly, LinkedIn.
Awesome. I love that. So again, thank you both for your time today. For folks that are watching, we're going to do a small break. Our next session is going to start at 11:35 Eastern time, Eastern Daylight Time, all these different time zones. So if you want to go ahead and get some coffee, get a stretch going, take a walk, we'll be back then at about 11:35 Eastern Daylight Time with our next session. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Georgie. Thanks, Monica. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.